Welcome to Sotheby's Australia's May sale of important Australian art. This collection covers some 200 years of Australian art history, from an important early view of Sydney Harbour, dated 1812 by William Lyttelton, through to a work made just last year, Mari Funaki's Object from 2010. Amongst the highlights of the sale is a collection of paintings assembled by the late Mr. Cecil Green, and here offered by the estate of his widow, the late Mrs. Marjorie Green. It's an exquisite collection, a group of paintings that exemplify traditional Australian taste, that sort of post-impressionist taste of the early 20th century. For example, this work by George Lambert, an exquisite, intimate portrait of his beloved wife Amy and their two sons, Constant and Maurice. Or this 1916 Eliath Gruner, a crisp and frosty picture from his Emu Plains period. Other important pictures from the Green collection include a handsome Venetian nocturne by Sir Arthur Streeton, with shimmering water and shipping in the foreground and the gleaming city in the distance. This is a picture from 1908, when Streeton and his wife Nora were actually on their honeymoon. And there's a group of pictures by an artist who was actually a friend of Mr. Green's, the great Norman Lindsay. One of the remarkable discoveries of the present sale is a group of 3 watercolours by Ludwig Becker, which were formerly owned by the great anthropological filmmaker Robert Flaherty. Becker is best known as the artist of the Burke and Wills expedition, but these works are from his first year in Australia, when he was in Van Diemen's Land, and they depict 3 Aboriginal people, known as Sarah, Henrietta and King Tipu, 3 of the refugees from Flinders Island who were then living at Oyster Cove. These are works of great poignancy and enormous historical significance. If the art of the early colonial period is very much about immigrants arriving, that of the late 19th and early 20th century is about artists departing, mainly for Paris and London. 2 of the artists of this Victorian Edwardian exodus are represented in the present sale with important pictures. Rupert Bunny's A Provincial Town in France was shown both at the Royal Society of British Artists in London and the Paris Salon d'Automne in 1904 and 1905, before finally coming to Australia in 1922. This bourgeois boating picnic party is typical of the soft, feminine, relaxed subject matter that brought Bunny such success in France in the 1910s. In many ways, Australia's most distinguished expatriate is John Russell, colleague and friend of Claude Monet, of Vincent van Gogh, and of Henri Matisse. Russell's bright, dashing landscapes of Belle-Île, the island off the Brittany coast where he lived for many years, really approach European Impressionism in style and manner. This picture of his 2 sons on a Belle-Île beach is a perfect symphony in gold and blue. It is quite gratifying to note that the May sale contains a number of 20th century sculptures. There are works by Clement Meadmore, Joel Ellenberg, Ron Robertson Swan and Lenton Parr. Of particular distinction is this work by Robert Klippel, a metal construction from the 1960s. With its welded and brazed parts attached to a tall member in the centre, it has a beautiful rusty patination, and it seems to recall either an African fetish of some kind or perhaps a memorial, a future memorial to industrial civilization. In total contrast, the jewellery designs of Mari Funaki were always black, geometric and smoothly finished. When she turned to making more abstract sculptural objects, she called them simply, or containers, they too had this kind of flat, matte black angularity. The present work, an object, is typical. And typical too is its strange animation. It's a kind of insect-like machine or mechanical insect. The sale contains numerous examples of classic modernism, and we are pleased to offer works from two of the great, even iconic series of mid-century. Sidney Nolan's Ned Kelly is represented by Glenrowan fragments, a 1955 painting which shows the influence of his trip to Italy, particularly in its checkerboard formalism. If Kelly was the alter ego of the larrikin painter Sidney Nolan, for Charles Blackman, his avatar was the schoolgirl, the delicate, elfin-like creature that dances through his paintings from 1953. In this particular example, the figure, innocent, precious, fragile, self-absorbed, represents all of those themes of innocence and danger which run through this important series. William Robinson's great original contribution to the long tradition of Australian landscape painting are those revolving landscapes of Beechmont and Springbrook, the pictures of the rainforest on the Gold Coast hinterland where everything spins. In these revolving landscapes, nothing is certain. The viewpoint changes constantly as the artist looks down, around, up, as trees go up and trees come down, and the sky sits in a puddle at the centre of the picture. In this relatively late work, it's from 2001, we can actually orient ourselves a little more readily. It's not quite so vertiginous, it's not quite so unsettling as some of the more extreme landscapes. We can see the line of Hopkins Creek, we can see the peak of Mount Warning. But at the same time, it has all of those multiple viewpoints, those fugal arrangements which make Robinson's landscape so rich. And the surface is absolutely sublime. It's rich, deep, complex array of brush marks mirroring the rich life of the rainforest floor. A particular highlight of the sale is Geoffrey Smart's 1980 painting, The Picnic. It's a bit of a joke. This group of three figures in the foreground may be familiar. It should be. It's the group from Edward Manet's famous Déjeuner sur l'herbe, which many people will know was in turn borrowed from a print by Raphael. This little art historical joke is the basis of the picture, and he complicates it still further by making this figure, a male in the Manet, into a female, and thereby into the figure of Eve, so that it becomes a kind of temptation picture at the same time. Beyond this in-joke, sight gag part of the painting, it is absolutely classic formal Smart, with the canvas divided at the line of the golden section, and there in the sky, that bold, stripy form of the Bologna water tower, contrasting strongly with the rich, organic, shadowy life beneath.